joined SaaStock a little while ago and are part of their founder circles. It's been absolutely brilliant for us. We first came into it to further our community, our reach, our network, and to learn from some of the world-class speakers that SaaStock has come and speak. And I have to say, it has been absolutely superb for us.
Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, CEO of SaaStock, and delighted to be welcomed today by Kevin KD Dorsey, who is the SaaS Sales Leadership Coach at Winning by Design. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, pumped to be here, man. It's a long time coming, so I'm excited for this.
Yeah, no, great to have you on the podcast. We've had Jacko on, of course, probably like once or twice, but I think he's spoken at almost every SaaStock conference on record. Almost. Him, Nathan Latka, maybe Patrick Campbell kind of hold the record for so far speaking at the most events. Delighted that actually this year, obviously it's a shame not to have Jacko there, but for you to come over to Dublin, speak at SaaStock 2022 for the first time. But obviously ahead of that, we've got you on the podcast. So I'm excited for the chat today. And we always start, as I say, people call you KD, so I'll go into that. So we always start, who is our guest? So who is, KD? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Who is KD? Man, we go deep on that. I am a son, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I am very passionate about sales and sales leadership. I feel very blessed to be in this career and to be focused on it and trying to help people grow and improve their results. I think sales is the best industry to be in. I've been, blessed, man, to be building SaaS sales teams for the last 10 years now. I've got 4 big team builds under my belt now of over 100 people on each of those and always in hyper growth mode. I've got 2 unicorns now under the belt with Service Titan and with Tebra after the Patient Pop merger. I'm still waiting for the patch in the mail. I thought you'd get a patch or something, when you get unicorn status, but apparently it doesn't matter. But, that's what I've been doing, and I love it. I love building teams. I love making things repeatable. And actually, funny enough, Jason Lemkin wrote an article a while back about the different types of VPs of sales. And the 2 I identify with is Mr. Make It Repeatable and Mr. Go Big. I'm not Mr. Dashboards, and I may not be Mr. IPO. I don't know that I want to run a 500-person sales org or a 1,000-person sales org. I'm the builder. I like to get it going and running, and that's the sweet spot that I've landed in, and I really enjoy it.
Awesome. And outside of SaaS sales and being a father, and do you have any hobbies or time for hobbies? What do you do? Where are you based, and what do you do?
So funny enough, and I talk about this with people, this is my hobby. I enjoy this, and I think it's sometimes, no one would ever give you, grief if you worked a full day and then went and played guitar for 2 hours, right? No one would give you any grief. But if you work for 8 hours and then work more for 2 hours, you're like, oh, you need balance. I enjoy this, right? So this is my hobby, which is why I have my own podcast, why I have the communities and the courses. I like to be in this space. But if I'm not building things around this, also I'm playing with my daughters. I like to read. I don't know if people can see the video. I've got tons of books behind me, so I love to read a good book and have a good whiskey, and that's where most of my time goes.
Good stuff. And so as you said, you super passionate about sales, which we love to see, with a great track record. The unicorn patch, I'm sure, is in the post. But what's the story about you then?
So I needed a break, for any of my fellow, founders or sales leaders out there. Startup life's a sprint, and I had been sprinting for 10 years straight. From Human to Stagnation to Service Titan to Patient Pop through the merger. So I was tired, right? In 2020 was a very rough year for me as a leader. So Patient Pop, man, we were cruising. I've never had a perfect sales team. It's what I chase, but I've never had a perfect sales team. But man, we were getting close. We were the culture, the vibe, the numbers. We were blowing it out. Then COVID hit. We sold to doctors. We lost a ton of our business literally within a 6-week period, and like, you know, had to go through layoffs and just all this awful stuff, and that took it out of me, right? Like, and so I wasn't going to leave my team in COVID. I was going to get them through and go through it all and get it back to where it needed to be. But after that dip and re-rise, I needed to pull back a little bit. So I was going to go out on my own, just do consulting for, you know, a bit, just kind of recharge. And then Winning by Design, I've always been close with, and they kind of were like, well, hey, if you want to do this for real, let's talk about it. And then that's how it worked. But also uniquely is like, I only wanted to focus on leadership for the most part, because that's where I saw the hole in the market. There's sales training everywhere. There's cold call training everywhere, but like sales leadership training doesn't exist. And so that's what I joined Winning by Design to really build out for them, so that we could help these companies. Because without strong leadership, the training doesn't matter. The playbook doesn't matter. And so that's where I'm spending my time now, and I really enjoy it.
And for those that maybe haven't listened to the podcast that Jacko's been in or don't know much about Winning by Design, can you just give a little bit of a picture as to what it is that they do? And like, you know, where they do it, and or where you do it, and, you know, how big is the company so nowadays?
Yeah. So I mean the company now, you know, is well over 100, 120 people, and we really work with a lot with, like, call it startup to scale up. So like once, you know, you're probably at that, you know, 15 to 20 million ARR like revenue range, right, to really help you get to that next stage, right, of like getting through that trough. Because trying to get from 20 million to 100 is a totally different ballgame than going from 0 to 10 million. That's when the systems have to be in place. That's where you need the playbooks. That's where you need the pods. That's where you really need to become metric and data driven. And so that's what we help companies do. We do diagnostics. We help them build their playbooks. We do like the training for, you know, SDRs, AEs, CSMs, like leadership, right? And so really we go through it, but it's a very scientific approach. It's not just like, this is our methodology. It's like we go in there and we see like, okay, your biggest area of focus is your lead conversion's low. We're going to focus there and make sure we can get that working the way it needs to be. So it's very scientific and data driven, which also means a lot to me. That's the type of leader I am as well. And yeah, we work with, you know, truly some of the best companies out there to really try to dial their systems in, make things repeatable, and get more out of the revenue org.
Do you only work with SaaS companies, or is it all types of sort of tech businesses?
For the most part, it's SaaS. It's pretty much all SaaS that we work with, because SaaS is unique, you know, in a lot of ways in terms of like how revenue is generated and how it all fits together, right? Like the old, you know, model of like, all right, I sell $1 million server and I get those $1 million up front and then we're going through. Whereas in SaaS, that's $1,000 a month payment. It changes the whole dynamic in terms of like how you actually make your revenue and go through it, and you can optimize each stage. So we focus primarily all on SaaS and tech.
And you mentioned that you run a podcast, which is called, I believe, Live Better, Sell Better. Mm-hmm. How does running a podcast help you, you know, in business and also life? So
in life, it forces me to be social. Right? Like, especially now that we're fully remote, like I'm not in an office. I don't have coworkers around me. Winning by Design's always been remote from the beginning. And, you know, it always surprises people. I'm way more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. Put me on stage, the energy will be there. I'm going to bring the passion. I'm going to get into it. But after that's over, I'm sitting by myself. I'm not working the room. Like, I'm not a social butterfly. That's not me. And so, funny enough, I started the podcast in 2020 because I realized I wasn't talking to anybody. Right? Like, talk to my coworkers, talk to my wife and daughters, and that was it. So I started it just to start having more conversations, right? And also, like, I'm blessed to have a very strong network in the sales space. And, like, the conversations that we're having via text or the conversations when we just hop on a Zoom, I'm like, people need to hear this stuff, right? Because it's you can't get that all from 1,300 characters on LinkedIn. You know, like I wanted to bring some of the other thought leaders to market and go through it. And so I love it. It keeps me social, but also I get to learn, right? I get to ask the questions and go, oh, like, how do you think about this? Or what do you do here? And it just keeps it fresh. You get to hear different ideas and different ways of approaching things, which makes me then question my own processes, right? Okay, how could that apply to what I do? I don't agree with that. Why not? Is it a proven thing? Is it a preference thing? So it just keeps me, I think, sharper than if I'm just always in my own little bubble.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, I mean, I think I've been podcasting for 7 years now. and I found it fantastic for building network, meeting some really interesting people, for learning. Like, it's a kind of a cheat code, for me for learning, both from, great entrepreneurs and guests, and more about SaaS. And yeah, it's super sort of valuable. Yeah, so like for me, obviously, I guess having done it for 7 years, you got to love it, right? If you're going to keep doing it week in, week out. But no, good to hear. And also, like, I think on your point about like being an introvert, and like what we've seen, I think sometimes it just surprises me, but it probably shouldn't, about people like yourself, and maybe like, I don't know, like if we call Jacko an introvert, but like as examples, but like we get people who come and speak on stage at SaaStock who are like put on a tremendous show and talk, right? And they're just full of energy, but then actually afterwards that, hey, they don't really want to mix with everybody, or they're very different, and yeah, it kind of, I don't know if you say, like, surprises me just sometimes how like people can turn that switch from being that kind of like performer to actually, well, deep down, I am an introvert. So yeah, I don't know, just something quite interesting that I've observed. Now, we know, I think yourself, you've got a great deal of experience in this. You said you're a builder, and also Winning by Design, I think, kind of have written the book, although, I mean, there are many books and kind of playbooks about getting to 10 million in revenue. And really, I think that's the sweet spot of where our audience kind of lies. So what I wanted to do, and use this opportunity of having you on the show, Kevin, is really for you to take us through what you think, is really this kind of playbook and some of the steps and frameworks for SaaS CEOs that are listening, and maybe VPs of sales and sales leaders, that can do to kind of take their business, anywhere really from 0 to 10 million ARR. So what are the steps, frameworks people need to kind of really think about?
So how to get to 10 million in under 10 minutes. Let's do this. This is easy, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
No problem. Like, whatever, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that I really look at when either I'm going into a company to start, or like, getting to work with them, is, working backwards from that 10 million. And also understanding in SaaS, it's not all new business, right? One of the things early companies tend to not focus on enough is actually churn. They're so focused on getting new logos that they're not paying attention to the systems of what keeps the logos, right? Because if you have a high churn, getting to $10 million takes a lot longer than if you have net negative churn, right? Meaning where your accounts are growing. Because if you have just neutral churn, $2 million a year, you get there in 5 years. Great. Okay, there's a 5 year to $10 million. You've got net negative churn where your accounts are growing. You're getting there in 3. You have 10% yearly churn. You're getting there in just under 7, right? And so it's making sure that from the beginning, you're also thinking about, one, how do I keep it? How do I keep the revenue that's coming in? How do I make sure that they're coming back? And one of the things actually Jocko coined a phrase recently that I've really liked is recurring revenue comes from recurring impact. Just because someone signed a yearly agreement doesn't necessarily mean that's recurring revenue. They just signed an annual agreement. If they didn't get impact in that year, it doesn't matter. So the first is making sure that you understand what impact means for your customers. What would keep them coming back? Then we work backwards from there of knowing your numbers, right? What is your average deal size? Okay, now we know how many deals we need to get to go through there. Okay, what's your close rate? Okay, now we know how much pipeline we need to generate to get there. What's your connect rate, conversion rate, your inbound lead rate? Now we know how much like lead volume we need to get there. And that's how you start to map out how to get there just from a revenue. Now it always works in the spreadsheet. We'll talk about once we get people involved here in a second, because I've built so many unicorns in the spreadsheets, man. It always works in the spreadsheet. But the first is the 10 million. Focus on churn first, making sure that you know, how am I going to keep this? Then you have to work through the data side of it. It's like, hey, how much pipeline, how many deals do I need? Because that's going to feed then your headcount model. So that's where it starts. It's just like, we got to know our numbers. From there, depending on where you are, right? Because if you're at 0, like, I don't know if your audience is literally at like $0 right now, but if you're at 0, right, you're just starting, you really have to focus on that product market fit, right? Are you actually solving a problem? Or did you build a product that you thought was a good thing, but the world isn't ready for yet? Your personas aren't ready for yet. So one of the first things I do when I either go into a new company or I'm working with founders early stage is we're doing either customer interviews or we're doing like prospect interviews, where I call them problem-based interviews, where if you have no customers yet, you need to go speak to 50 of your possible personas, right? And you reach out to them. You reach out to them on LinkedIn, you reach out to them on email, and literally you're saying, hey, I'm building something in your space. I would love to ask you some questions about this problem. I'm not going to sell you. I'm not going to pitch you. I'm not even going to tell you what our product does. I just want to get your understanding and feedback around the problem in this space, right? So it's like, say you're building a tool for, I don't know, onboarding, whatever, right? It's like, hey, I see you're hiring a lot of reps. I'd love to ask you 7 or 8 questions about onboarding. Not about, I'm not going to show the product, I'm not going to do anything. I'd just like to pick your brain around the space. You'll be shocked how many people will say yes to that. But then that's where you understand what the problem actually is to ensure that your product can actually solve it. Because that's where a lot of early companies miss, is they build products that don't solve problems. They build products that are newer, shinier, better, but it's not actually a core problem for people, so you don't buy it, right? Because the first salesperson has to be the founder. And yes, all you product leaders out there, I'm telling you, you have to be the first salesperson. Because if you can't sell it as the founder, as the person that built it, as the person that had a reason to do it, asking a new salesperson to come in won't get you there. So we have to identify that product market fit. What problem is it solving, and what personas does it solve it the best for? Because also, as we keep going, I'll pause here for a second for questions. A lot of early stages, they actually aim too big. They're going after everybody, right? Look how big the TAM is, Alex. Look, we can go after everyone. Versus who do you solve the problem the best for, and narrowing your focus down there. You can get to 10 million ARR focusing just on a portion of your TAM if you nail it and you really know their problems and their language. So I'll pause there for questions and we can keep going.
Yeah. Let's say 2 questions, certainly around the PMF side of things. So, I mean, we do have obviously some listeners that are at like 0 revenue, or you know, but also quite a few that, you know, have some revenue, but they're working their way to product market fit. And you mentioned about the founder needing to lead sales kind of initially, because they got to understand really how to sell it and speaking to the customer and getting on the phone. So, how long do you think the founder should lead sales for? You know, is it to the first 100K? Is it to the first million? And again, maybe that also depends on ACV. So if you can share some thoughts on that. Yeah.
So I actually prefer number of deals more than revenue, right? To your point, like ACV is kind of hard with this. Basically, you want to get as close to like 20-ish deals as you can as the founder, right? Because the first 10 tend to be like friends, family, and investors. Right, where it's like people that you knew, people that are friends, investor introductions, so there's already like some relationship there. It's that next 10 to show like, okay, like is there a fit here? Are other people buying it, right? And I basically, can't remember who said it, it's like, but are you getting strangers money? Because until you're getting strangers money, you don't have product market fit yet. You have just a strong network. So I like, 15 to 20, because at that point you've gotten through the first 10, right? You've gotten your next 10, and now you actually have a decent chunk to go back to for customer interviews to help build like this playbook out. So I like 20 more than ARR, because you could land one big deal and already beat $1 million ARR. We didn't learn anything yet.
Yeah. No, interestingly, I know, and I don't forget the number correct, but founder that's doing north of 10 million ARR, and I think he did over the first 1,000 demos. I want to say it was 4,000 demos, but it probably was 1,000. But would you say that was arguably too much, because the CEO could probably be doing something, a little bit better? Have they kind of holding on to sales a little bit too long?
So it depends on how many deals they closed.
Yeah.
Right? If it took 1,000 demos to get 20 deals, then something's really wrong, right? Something's off there. But if they did the 1,000 demos to close the first 150 deals, then yeah, I think that's probably too much, right? Because at that point, and again, it depends on the founder and it depends on the goals, right? And I think especially in SaaS, it's like we've lost sight in a way of like building a profitable $10 million per year business. Shoot, building a profitable $5 million per year business. Like there's ways to do that as the founder leading the sales and you've got a few people on the engineering side going through it. So it depends on the goals of the founder. But yeah, 1,000 demos, right? I mean, Jesus, think about that. If you're running even 2 a day, that is almost 2 years, right? Of like 2 a day. That's probably too much in my opinion. But again, if they're not closing, then the founder needs to keep going until they start to close.
What if you found product market fit but marketing, like let's say go to market fit is not quite there yet. So you're getting some leads in, but probably not like enough to really, I don't know, fulfill the plate of a sales person, right? I don't know what sort of role. What would you suggest at that point in terms of like, do you focus on getting go to market fit right so that you've got enough leads for your salesperson, or do you hire a specific type of salesperson to kind of come in that is able to kind of generate their own leads and close those and take the meetings? What would you say at that sort of PMF stage?
So it'll obviously, again, depends on your growth and your budget, right? Because there's certain things you can afford to do, right? Hiring a sales rep will be, call it short-term fast and short-term, expensive, but you're getting results quicker. Whereas investing in marketing takes time, right? So it's like short-term expensive, but long-term payoff, right? Like SEO is going to take some time. Building an inbound lead channel takes some time. Paying for ads is expensive, right? And it doesn't always pay off right away, but you're going the right direction with this. Like the motto that I talk with companies all the time is POE, pipeline over everything. If you don't have enough pipeline, you can't grow. And oftentimes founders do make that mistake where they're like, okay, we need to grow. Let me go hire some AEs. There's no pipeline there to support those AEs. And so there's 2 ways you can do that pipeline outside of marketing, right? And again, marketing, you need to understand what your best channels are going to be. Is that going to be just paid ads out the start, right? It's an established market, so you know there's search volume. Is that SEO, where maybe there's not a huge like search volume, but you can start to grab all those long tail keywords, so you're the ones that show up for all of that, right? Is it webinar based? Is it events, things of that nature? You need to know your market, because that's also too something to know about your prospects is where do they consume data? Like where do they consume content? Is that on LinkedIn? Is that on Google? Is it on Reddit? You're going after Gen Z. Is it on TikTok? Like you need to know where to be, right? But on the outbound side, you can either get an SDR or you can get a full cycle AE. An SDR will be cheaper, but require way more support. And I see this happen a lot with founders is they're like, okay, we closed some deals. We need some more pipeline. Let me go get 2 SDRs. Unless you're able to manage them, onboard them, train them, support them, motivate them, inspire them, don't start with an SDR because they need a lot of help. You try to find a full cycle AE that knows your industry, right? Because that's where you can learn that full process quicker of like they are prospecting, right? So they're emailing, cold calling, social, whatever, and closing those deals. It removes the variables of like mistakes. And ideally you try to go get 2, because if you get 1, you don't know. You don't know if it was a person problem or a process problem or a product problem. You try to go get 2, but then yes, you have to go to market using what you've learned about the prospects. That's why those prospect interviews and customer interviews are so valuable, because that's what feeds your go-to-market like system is you know how to talk to the prospects to gather that information and gather that interest.
So you mentioned about getting 2 AEs there. It sort of made me think, because we've had these conversations in the past, but actually never really done it. So we're not a SaaS company, but I'm sure this is applicable to SaaS companies. But in terms of when you're making that sales hire, like hiring 2 people for the same role, making it kind of like competitive, and then, if after 3 months it doesn't work out for one, you say, okay, it didn't work out, but it works out for the other one. But if it works out for both, then you're in a good position because actually then they're generating that revenue. So are you an advocate of like always hiring 2 people for this kind of like one role? And then if it works out, so what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. Early on, yes. right? Because especially when it's full cycle, if you're hiring 2 AEs but it's not full cycle, that tends to not work because there generally isn't enough pipeline in place yet to support 2 AEs. So you're going to have 2 very hungry AEs and they're going to get frustrated very quickly. But early on, you have to hedge your bets to make sure you know what was broken or not. Because sales hiring is hard. It's hard to hire salespeople. I have interviewed thousands of salespeople, and I have a decent process in place. But even with a good process in place, like you're looking at a hit rate of like 60 to 70% at best. And so if you're a first-time founder trying to interview salespeople, you know what salespeople are really good at? Selling themselves. So like they're all going to sound great in the interview. And if you only hire 1, 3 months later we have no deals. Was it you? Was it the problem was the rep? Or is the market still not ready yet? And you'd lose that ability to make a decision like that. So that's why I believe in getting 2 there if you can.
Let's just do a quick recap on some of those key steps before we move on to the next section, if you can, Kevin.
Cool. So if we're recapping, 1, it's working backwards from the number, right? Work backwards from the number in terms of how much revenue do you need that is new versus how much revenue is going to be coming in from renewals, right? So you have to focus on churn early, but you have to work backwards. Once you know that growth path, then you're focusing on pipeline generation. How can we generate enough pipeline to get to that revenue? And that's where you're using assumptions around close rate. Because if the founder ran 50 demos and closed 5 deals, that's a 10% close rate. The odds that an AE is going to outsell the founder early is rare. Like it's rare that an AE is going to outsell the founder. So you have an assumption of like, hey, if the founder was 10%, well, that AE is probably only going to close at 5-7% to start. So you're going to need a lot of pipeline to get there, right? To generate pipeline, you have to nail the problem messaging of your prospects. And that's where the prospect interviews come in. That's where the customer interviews come in of like, hey, what problems are they dealing with? And how can you connect the dots to your product? And then that's what leads to your prospecting channels, whether you're doing inbound, nailing that language, whether you're doing outbound with a full cycle AE or with SDRs, but it's then setting sights on producing enough pipeline to get to that revenue mark. And now we've got the start of the funnel, right? And Winning by Design, we call it the bow tie, not the funnel. Everyone loves the funnel, right? Leads to deals. In SaaS, it's the bow tie. It's leads to deals, but then deals to impact and expansion. You make all your money on the back end in SaaS, and it's making sure you're focused on that from the beginning.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Moving into our quick fire-ish round, what is the one thing that's moved the needle the most for your career?
Studying people. Like how people make decisions, how emotions drive people, how buyers act. Like really studying people, what fear does to us, how to motivate. That has made me a better leader, and it's definitely made me a better salesperson. So studying people, biggest impact on my career, bar none.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Pretty simple, actually. The better you are, the better your results will be.
What is the biggest failure you've made and lesson learned?
Oh, man. Relationships matter. Relationships matter, right? Like, I missed out on a pretty good opportunity because I just didn't build the right relationships internally. Just didn't build them, right? I was like, I'm just going to come in, do my job, and be gone. But, like, relationships matter in business, right? Like it's not just a numbers game. You could hit your numbers and not have good relationships with people and it'll come back to bite you. So I'd say that's my biggest mistake is not proactively making great relationships with coworkers, C-suite, people around me.
What does your daily routine look like?
Daily routine. I get up generally around 6 a.m., sometimes a little bit before. I do some journaling pretty much every day, gratitude every day. So I follow something called GERMS, right? It's my own acronym. So gratitude, exercise, reading, meditation, and sleep. So I try to do gratitude every day, some sort of exercise every day, some sort of reading every day, some sort of like meditation, visualization, breath work, and then I really prioritize my sleep. But I'm very intentional. Like when I'm working, I'm working. Like I'm not on social media, I'm not on whatever else. Like I'm working so that when I'm done working, I can also be intentional with my family, my hobbies, whatever else. And so that's my routine is up, get through gratitude, journaling, all that, then I get to work. All right, take some breaks throughout of it, probably work till 5-ish, you know, 5:30, sometimes later than that, unfortunately. But then, you know, that's my routine, is I'm getting germs every single day.
How many hours of sleep are you getting a night?
8 to 8.5 every night.
That's good. Good stuff. And so, like we mentioned, you're coming over to Dublin, so we're excited for that. So you're speaking at SaaStock 2022. Do you know what you'll be speaking about? And also, what are you looking forward to the most?
What I'm talking about is the concept of aim small, miss small. How focusing on the small details is actually how you have big results. So often in SaaS and leadership, we talk about the big things. We need more revenue. We need to bring our churn down. Great. How? So I'm going to be talking about how do you get to the level to actually change the results. You can't change results. Results are in the past. You can only change a result if you change a metric. And you can only change a metric if you change a behavior, process, or skill. That's what aim small, miss small is all about. So that's what I'll be diving into at the conference. I'm very excited for it. And then what I'm most excited about, one, just to go there. This has been on my list for a while. Be able to speak. I've been able to speak at, you know, most of the other conferences, but I've never been able to go to yours. And so I'm excited to be able to do that. But then also I surprised my family that they're coming with. So my wife and daughters are also coming out to Dublin. We're staying at the Ashford Castle for a few days.
Oh, wow.
Doing like a family trip out of it. I mean, truthfully, my wife, daughters have never seen me perform. They've never seen me on stage. They've never been there for it. So that will be really exciting for them to get to see that and then spend time in a new country as a family. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Love it. No, that'll be a special moment. And also jealous that you're going to Ashford Castle. Yeah, it looks amazing. I think it's one of the world's best hotels. So that'll be great. So making a few days of it in Ireland. So great stuff. What about your favorite business book, if you have one? And what are you currently reading?
Ooh, okay. Favorite business book. So truthfully, man, more and more I keep coming back to, it's not even a business book, but it's had probably one of the biggest impacts on my ability to scale businesses, which is the Checklist Manifesto, which has nothing to do with business, but it applies to business, right? And that, I mean, bar none, right? Like, quick overview on it. It's like doctors follow checklists because they save lives. Pilots follow checklists because they save lives. Submarine operators, they all follow checklists because it saves lives. And then we get into sales and SaaS, and it's all in our heads. So documenting things, having the prompts, having the reminders so people in the moment can do the right things, that's how you scale. You can't make something repeatable if it's in your head because you aren't repeatable. You got to get it down on paper. So like that combined with Traction are my two favorite like combined business books. And what I'm reading now, so reading two things right now, generally going through two books at a time. The first one is How to Do Hard Things, which is really, really good on like how we have the idea of building toughness wrong. It's backwards how we think about building toughness, and it's like how to actually build it. How do you actually teach someone to be tough? Most of the things we do around toughness are actually filtering exercises. They're not building toughness, they're filtering out the people that aren't. That's not how you build a team. That's not how you build a culture, by filtering. You have to teach people how to be tougher. So that's one of the books I'm reading right now. And then the Surrender Experiment is another one that I'm reading right now.
Very cool. Yeah, I haven't read the Checklist Manifesto. Agree with everything you said. Something that we definitely need to get off the shelf or buy from Amazon or wherever and have a read of that. So thanks for sharing that with the audience. Kevin, KD, where can people find you online if they want to reach out? Obviously, they can see you at SaaStock 2022 in Dublin, but where can they find you online?
Well, so obviously come see me in Dublin, right? I'll be there, so can't wait. Excited for that. But I do have my own podcast, Live Better, Sell Better, that I really enjoy. It focuses on like the person side in salesperson as well as the sales side. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I'm at that stupid connection limit, so I can't take more connections right now, but you can follow me there, and those are probably the best ways to do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, KD. Great to have you on the SaaS Revolution Show, sharing with the SaaStock audience. Great speaking to you, and looking forward to seeing you and the family in October in Dublin.
Yes, me too, my man. Can't wait.